So we light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, with words from Rebecca Parker, former president of Star King School for the Ministry. With the kindling of this flame, we reaffirm our commitment to life's gifts and grace and gratitude, and to use them to bless the world in the spirit of love. And now, let us join together with our words of our mission, affirming our shared purpose. Empowered by love, we transform ourselves and serve our world.
Hello. I'm Jennifer Springsteen. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm glad to be with you today. Thank you for inviting me. I am also going to be doing a workshop, a writing workshop, after service at 11:30 in the chapel. If you would come and join me. It's called Write Like a Poet, but you don't have to be a poet. You can write whatever you want. Come join me there. And I also wanted to extend a thank you for those of you who brought flowers today for the religious education project that's going on. Thank you for doing that. So now I welcome all of you. Those who come today with joy and gladness, those who come whose hearts are heavy, spirits are heavy, longing for connection and solace, welcome to you too. Welcome those who are ready to stand up and sing, and welcome those who are in need of peaceful prayer. May there be something here for all of you today, something cloaked in mystery, something holy. Welcome. Our story today is thanks to the James Webb Telescope. It's about a girl working on that telescope. So once upon a time, there was a girl with a joyous heart and a big imagination, but sometimes she felt the world was too slow for her taste. When she played kickball, it seemed she'd never get a turn. And while the other kids had their birthdays in February and March, she had to wait all to the end of summer for hers. And why did strawberries planted in the garden take so long to ripen when the dandelions bloomed so quickly? She found that she would have a little brother, her parents told her, and she was crushed to find out it would take 9 whole months for him to get there. But then the office had to be cleared for his nursery. Otherwise, he'd have to share her room. She didn't want that. The walls had to be painted bright yellow, and her mother let her stencil circles and squares and triangles all in red around the baby's room. If her brother had come right away, they wouldn't have been able to paint that bright yellow, and she wouldn't have been able to stencil the squares and stars. When the girl grew older, she wondered about time and how long things took to be born. Not just babies, but stars and planets and galaxies. She went to school so she could hang out with other people who thought those same things. People who wondered how everything began and who thought it would be a good idea to see if they could figure it out. It was going to take a lot of time. A lot of time. Well, they built a telescope called the James Webb Telescope, and they had to make light-catching mirrors fit inside the telescope, super thin, thinner than a piece of paper. And then they had to fold it in small little pieces like origami, like a honeycomb origami, and then get it inside. And then they had to make that honeycomb origami open up inside the telescope once it had been blasted into space. And if that weren't hard enough, they had to make sure that none of those mirrors heated up, because then it would be like your bathroom mirror, all steamed up and you can't see anything. So they had to make heat shields, really thin, thinner than a piece of paper, fold it up like a honeycomb origami, fit that inside the telescope, and then make sure that opened up. Everything had to work just right. And then, once they blasted it off into space, it was going to take a long time before they could see if everything worked. 6 months. The girl hated waiting. And they had to send that thing 14 billion light years away. Way away. It's kind of mind-boggling how far away they had to send it so that they could see how the Earth began, how our solar system began. Well, the girl felt like she would jump out of her skin. But then, wow, what they Now let's give ourselves a moment to quiet together. You can close your eyes or soften your vision. And let's take some breaths together. Feeling your lungs fill and then blow out. Let's do that a couple more times where you feel your lungs fill. So maybe there's even a hitch at the top, and then release. Your lungs filling and releasing. Giving yourself some time and space here, quiet, with the congregants around you. Letting yourself shift into something that is holy. Letting your mind clear and be held in love. Let's stay quiet together for just a few moments. You can bring yourself back into the room now.
Our reading today is The Life Slow and Precious by the Reverend Teresa Soto. It is a truth, though it may not always feel like one, that you are worth more than the things that you do. That you are a worthy human being, lives in a different dominant than all of your failures, but also all of the collected sum of your successes. Combining your worth with your results is something like using sheet music for Beethoven's Fifth Symphony to make an apple pie or to build a doghouse. There's no way for the question to resolve in a final answer. By virtue of being alive, you matter, and you cannot be more deserving of dignity, of respect, of love. Sometimes people make mistakes, but even that cannot change that you are meant to be festooned with celebration of your humility. If your progress is slow, your movement small, remember that you don't have to compete for compassion. You don't have to compare what you can observe of another's life to make sure that you measure up. You are definitely yourself. What is slow is also valuable. Some of the oldest seeds ever sprouted are narrow-leaved campion that grew even though the seeds were 32,000 years old, more or less. They had to survive to be able to bloom, encased in ice, thawed, and brought to life. The most important thing is that you make it, no matter how imperceptible the movement, how long it takes to reach the best version of who you mean to be. You are irreplaceable. You are meant to live.
When I began seminary, my friend gifted me with a book exploring the Sufi view of the 99 names of Allah. And because I couldn't stop talking about it, another friend invited me to join her for an interfaith community service when Imam Jamal Rahman was the speaker. He unfolded the topic of patience with stories and verse, and I've been entangled with the many aspects of patience ever since. I hope you'll be patient with me as I pull these strings I want to unravel. I'm thinking of patience as waiting, as virtuous, of patience as being present with the moment, and divine patience. And I should come clean. I'm interested in this topic because patience often eludes me. When I told my daughter I wanted to go into ministry, she laughed and said, "A minister? You're so impatient." She also said I was grumpy and cursed too much, but I'll save those topics for another sermon. When he spoke at the interfaith service, Rahman told us the Quran says, little by little. He told us lovers of God never run out of patience because they know it takes the crescent moon time to become whole. I'll say that again. Lovers of God never run out of patience because they know it takes time for the crescent moon to become whole. Patience, then, is the stowaway, smuggled between the crescent moon and its whole. Patience is waiting. The impatience I felt in my body when I was young, it started when I had to wear corrective shoes and could never leave the shoe store with my new shoes on my feet the way my sister did, leaving the old ones in the box. And I had to get the same style of shoe every year. Only 2 colors to choose from, fitted with special inserts. But my mother allowed me a pair of black patent leather Mary Janes for church only. I loved those Mary Janes. My mother kept the shoes hidden in a box under her bed so I wouldn't wear them outside of the appointed time. But of course, I snuck and put them on every chance I got. I had no patience for Sundays to arrive. And when caught or told on by my sister, which is the most likely scenario, my mother explained in yawning detail about my growing bones, about corrective shoes now or braces later. The Mary Janes were so shiny. Did I mention that they had a little white pearl to hold the strap together, and that I was careful never to scuff them? And yet it was patience years later that drove me to practice dance. My mother started me in ballet classes to strengthen my feet. I stood every night at the back of my bed doing 100 releves in my point shoes. I know wearing corrective shoes, doesn't compare to how it would feel to be out of place in one's own body, of wanting to dress in a way that expressed who you were inside, or being outlawed for something as intimate as using the restroom that conformed to the identity that you knew yourself to be. I was able to receive care to fix what hadn't been right for me at birth, but there are children in Arkansas, Texas, Alabama, Arizona, who won't get the care that they need to affirm the people they are. These laws say to the children and their parents, wait. Wait until the cost is higher, the physical risks greater. In his poem, What Work Is, Philip Levine begins, "We stand in the rain in a long line, waiting at Ford Highland Park for work. You know what work is. If you're old enough to read this, you know what work is, although you may not do it. Forget you. This is about waiting, shifting from one foot to the other." Levine doesn't talk about waiting as patience, yet his story is one where people at the end of the day, after being told there is no work, go home to their hungry families, cold and cowed, and they get back up the next day and return to the line. If they return the next day and the next without giving in to the desperateness of breaking the line, without throwing a punch at the mouth of an off-color comment, that is patience. Patience defines the reaction to trouble. Sometimes it is rewarded and sometimes it is not, and the trouble remains the same. I'm reminded of what Martin Luther King Jr. said in his letter from Birmingham jail addressing the white man's weight. King wrote, "For years I have heard the word wait. This wait has almost always meant never." If patience is a virtue, who benefits from its virtuosity? The oppressed? The oppressor? Reverend Teresa Soto explores the Theodore Parker quote, reawakened by King, about the arc of the moral universe bending towards justice. They remind us that the arc doesn't bend itself. Sometimes it is we, you and me, who must do the bending. Like being called to the streets after the murder of George Floyd, or bringing down the monuments of white domination in southern cities. Or, like now, marching again for reproductive justice and getting out the vote. The Sufi saying goes, "It takes time for the crescent moon to become whole." And yet, how many moons must we wait for justice? I can't help but think of all the activism in this nation, in the world, that has balanced restraint with intolerance. Impatience agitates for change. Patience as persistence. Patience as faith. Thich Nhat Hanh writes, "Waking up in the morning, I smile. 24 brand new hours before me. I vow to live fully into each moment." So now the thread to pull is patience as presence. Awake to the holiness of the moment rather than seeking the holy as an end result. I know we can't rush the most mysterious of transformations, birth, death. There is something essential for us to witness in these liminal periods, something that can't be rushed. My daughter refused to arrive in a timely manner into this world. I spent that pregnant July barely able to bend into my raised beds to pick the string beans, while inside my belly she turned backside round and sunny side up, just to remind me how I need to let go and let go and let go in my new mother role. And I think of the hours that passed as I rocked her in the early morning or sat on the floor naming the sounds of things, of colors and shapes, over and over again. Something was happening. We both knew it. Something was transferring between us. As a chaplain intern, I sat with harried families who had removed the last of the machines from their dying loved ones. Death has its own timeline. Goodbyes are slow. A daughter will say, "I don't know when it's right to leave my dad." A lover will say, "She'll want her hat. She gets so cold." Sometimes I was called into rooms with patients who had no family saying goodbye. They circled the room in spirit, trying to find a way home. If my daughter only knew how patient I had been in those rooms. Attentive to death, witness to suffering. Where I have found the calm, I can only guess. Remember, the chaplain teacher told us, God is already in the room. Little by little, learning, acceptance, grace, patience as presence. Here's another string to tug on, God's endless patience with people. Some of you might be giving me the furry eyeball thinking, Yahweh, patient? And I hear you, because there was a lot of anger unleashed in the Old Testament when God saw people cheating on one another, turning away from the hungry and sick. Yet I love the example of godly patience in the book of Jonah, that reluctant prophet. God asks Jonah to speak to the people, to be a prophet for crying out loud. And what does Jonah do? He runs to the next town. He runs down the docks. He gets on a boat and hides in the hull. And if that weren't annoying enough, Jonah gets himself swallowed up by a fish. And only then does he make a fuss over his godly devotion, trapped inside the fish belly. To top it off, the people of Nineveh change their evil ways, and then Jonah gets mad at God for relenting punishment on them. Why should those people be spared God's wrath? Still, God continues to try to get Jonah to understand the importance of his role as prophet. God doesn't give up on Jonah. He teaches Jonah by example his compassion and how people can help their own fate. I'm reminded of Reverend Soto's explanation of helping bend that arc of justice. Like Jonah, some of us need to learn the same lessons over and over again before a light sparks inside us. So perhaps the ranting and the raging of Hosea and the lamenting of Amos is God's hope that eventually people will come around and treat each other kindly, that they will seek good and not evil. Perhaps the lesson is that patience and big emotion do coexist. Even with these Bible stories and those in the Quran, I feel impatient on the meditation cushion, longing for peace of mind, for insight, for connection to the holy. Meditation is like those 100 releves, strengthening my spirit. Believe in God, even when God is silent, the song goes. I know this in my mind, and yet my soul calls something wonderful. Come fill me now. It makes me wonder whether patience is connected to a feeling of abundance and impatience to scarcity. When we feel that we don't have enough, whether a perceived mental state or a physical reality, we can't experience the abundance in our lives. Maybe you have experienced lack in your life too. Lack of time, social status, employment, faith, fairness. It feels endless, and we are impatient for change. We have returned to where we started. The message in my gifted book is that divine love is flowing to you. It is given freely like rain. And like the earth, we can open up to that rain, to that gift of divine abundance, and we can be nourished. If we allow ourselves to open, we can reap the benefit of God's abundance, like a fruit-bearing tree. The patience in this lesson comes from knowing that there is enough divine love for all of us, and it is given unconditionally. We are held in that love. Patience. It is the orange cat at the edge of the cedars in the rain, waiting for the wet mouse to begin the evening's forage. The astronomer with her telescope. A turtle walking anywhere. An old man in a small boat hungry for a fish. The time it takes between the gin rummy and your next turn to play. Pupation. You relaxed in meditation with your breath flowing in and flowing out. The belief in the sun, even when it's not shining. The moon will come full again when it comes full again, and no more quickly than that. We will sit with one another through the suffering for as long as it takes. The light outside the window will alter, the wound will heal, and God is already in the room, waiting for the conversation to begin. Will you pray with me? Spirit of life and love, God of many names, we have arrived at this moment as best we could, with a desperate longing to be loved, with quiet joy, a thirst for justice. Remind us that there are moments when we should hold still and witness each day, each moment, no matter how sweet, how bitter. Remind us to believe in the sun when it is not shining. In that stillness, we learn who it is we are becoming. Holy One, calm our minds and our hearts with blankets of snow or the sun's warm glow or bells of laughter, or you choose, Holy One, you choose. May it be so. Amen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. It has been so good to be together. This is the day we have been given. May we rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace, practice love. Amen.